Welcome everyone to Current Affairs by Civils 360 IS Academy. So in this session we will be discussing about the US-Israel-Iran war, and we are going to start with the history of Iran, history of the conflict as well. And the next session we will discuss on the geography of Iran as well as the geography of West Asia, and one more session will be there on the nuclear plans, the JCPOA and all those kind of things. Okay, so in this session we will be looking at the history of Iran and the history of the conflict and various terms associated with that. So UPSC, there's a high chance some of these terms can be asked in either as a separate question or in part of a statement. Okay, so if you look at the history of Iran, a lot of dynasties had actually ruled Iran, and the latest dynasties, if you look at, was the Qajar dynasty. Okay, Qajar dynasty and the Pahlavi dynasty. Okay, so the Qajar dynasty was ruling Iran until about 1925. Okay, and they were replaced by the Pahlavis of 1925, led by Shah, Raza Shah. Okay, Muhammad Raza Shah Pahlavi established the Pahlavi dynasty in Iran in 1925. Okay, so these are all monarchs. Okay, they are absolute monarchy, and all those. This is how Iran has been run. So the story actually starts from World War II, where Iran had actually supported Germany, right? And due to this support, and also Iran had a lot of oil wealth, the allies, that is USSR and UK, they actually intervened into Iranian affairs for the first time in Operation Countenance. Okay, Operation Countenance. Okay, that is in 1941. Okay, 1941. So at that time it was the Shah, Muhammad Raza Shah Pahlavi, who was actually there, and they actually intervened. They actually interfered. Okay, and their basic aim was actually the oil industry of Iran, right? And UK and USSR intervened, and UK acquired a lot of oil assets in Iran during using that operation. Okay, in 1941. Okay. So at that time they had a parliament. This intervention by the allies also established some sort of parliament there as well. But you can say there was a monarchy and there was also a parliament, but larger powers was with the monarchy. Okay. Then what happened was that in 1951, okay, so 1941, Operation Countenance, the allies invaded because Iran supported Germany also to get their oil assets, and British got a lot of ownership of the oil industry. In 1951, the Prime Minister of Iran at that point of time, who was known as Mossadegh, okay, Mohammad Mossadegh, he nationalized the British-owned oil industry, which led to the Abadan Crisis. So UPSC can simply ask a question: the Abadan Crisis was related to which of the following? Okay, so please understand Operation Countenance, the Abadan Crisis. These kind of words are important for prelims point of view, right? So Abadan Crisis in 1951, wherein the nationalization of British-owned oil industry by the Prime Minister of Iran named Mohammad Mossadegh happened, and this led to the 1953 coup. Okay, like the US and UK, since they lost the oil industry, they need to get back, right? So the US and UK instigated using their secret agency MI6 and CIA, which was called Operation Ajax and Operation Ajax and Operation Boot. Okay, Operation Boot and Operation Ajax in 1953, they instigated a coup and they overthrew the PM. Okay, remember, the PM was the one who got overthrown. The Shah is still there. Muhammad Raza Shah Pahlavi is still there. And after this coup, so just to recap, in 1941, when they intervened, they actually they gave more powers to the Shah. So the Shah was more pro-Western, person. Okay, so that was actually in 1953 also, when that coup was instigated and the PM, Muhammad Mossadegh, got overthrown, the Shah got more powers. Okay, and during this period from 1953 to the Iranian Revolution of 1979, we can see that a lot of pro-Western reforms were carried out by the Shah. Okay, and at that time the oil industry was returned to UK and US. Okay, now they own the oil industry, they own a lot of assets in Iran. So that reforms brought in by the Muhammad Raza Shah Pahlavi is what we call as White Revolution. It's another important term. Remember, White Revolution. Okay, so Operation Countenance. Then you had some. They may even ask in a chronological order. Then you had Abadan Crisis. Okay, then Operation Ajax and Operation Boot. Okay, then you had the White Revolution. Okay, White Revolution, which refers to the reforms, pro-Western ideology. So if you see a lot of vintage images of Iranian women without their hijab and all, that's all from that era. Okay, so White Revolution happened. So that was actually opposed. These kind of reforms were opposed by the Islamic clerics, mainly led by one Khomeini, Ruhollah, his Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Okay, so he was actually a what you can say clearless leader of the Shia majority there, and he, if you look at his origin, he's actually from India, but his grandfather and all migrated to Iran. Then they established a Islamist Shia mode of cleric. He was a Shia cleric. Okay, so he and those Shia Islamists, they opposed these reforms by the Shah. Okay, and in 1979, a revolution happened which completely shifted the picture. Right, Shah was overthrown in 1979 Iranian Revolution, and the supreme leader, a new system was actually created. A new system was created wherein the supreme leader is actually Ruhollah Khomeini. Okay, Khomeini. Okay. So at that year itself, another important event happened was that some of the Iranian students who was actually part of the revolution, they held about 52 Americans captive. And their American embassy in Tehran, which was a very, very, what you can say, significant change in the geopolitical event, because diplomats usually got expelled. Okay, they could not be held hostage. There was no precedent to that in the history before. Okay, so this was the first time such a situation happened and led to a hostage crisis, which led to the Algiers Accord. So in the Algiers Accord, okay, the Algiers Accord, which was brokered by Algeria between US and Iran, US removed a lot of sanctions, released a lot of Iran's assets, and in return, the hostages were given, the diplomats were left out. Okay, so the Algiers Accord is also remembered in 1979 itself. Okay, then during this period, Iraq also tried to intervene, and Iraq under Saddam Hussein tried to get a lot of oil assets because Iran was a newly created country, right? So there's a chance for instability, but here there was also use of chemical weapons, but Iraq did not win the war. Iran pushed them back. Then a lot of things happened, like for example the Gulf War happened, then 9/11 happened. So after 9/11, so remember, the sanctions on Iran actually began from 1979 itself, and during the 9/11, US labeled Iran as an axis of evil and a target. Okay, and a target, and they did target before, like for example, so at this point of time, another important point is that Iran also developed a lot of nuclear power plants as well at Bushehr, Natanz, etc. So we'll discuss those sites as well in another session. So in Natanz, a attack was carried out by US, a cyber attack, which was called Operation Olympic Games, which is unacknowledged by the US, but it has been confirmed by the various other agencies. Okay, so that was the situation until now. Okay. Then Iranian regime had faced a lot of protests before, like for example, during the Arab Spring Revolution also a lot of protests happened. During that hijab protest, okay, the death of that Amini woman, that is also led to a lot of protests in Iran. And now we have the war, and the main sticking point of the war, also, or what you can say, the visible reason for the war has been the nuclear program of Iran. Although the so after Ruhollah Khomeini dies in 1989, Ali Khamenei actually came into power, who was just been killed by the US-Israel operation. So he actually gave a fatwa in about 2006 that nuclear energy is actually opposed to Islam. We are not going to develop any nuclear weapon like that. But still, that was the point of control, the visible reason for the entire operation, which we will discuss in another session. So remember just to recap, remember the years, what happened, okay? Remember the dynasty, Okay, remember in 1941, first intervention by the Allies, USSR and UK, Operation Countenance. Then 1951, the nationalization of the British oil industry, which led to the Abadan Crisis. Then 1953, the coup instigated by US and Israel by Operation Ajax and Operation Boot. Right. Then you have the White Revolution, reforms brought in by the Shah. Okay, then the Iranian Revolution, and then the Iran hostage crisis, which led to the Algiers Accord. Okay, Algiers Accord, and then finally you can see the Iran-Iraq war, then the Gulf War. Okay, 9/11, nuclear development by Iran with the help of Russia, right? Then Operation Olympic Gates, a targeted cyber attack against a nuclear facility at Natanz. Okay, and then you had a lot of the recent events, right? From Arab Spring and all those things happened. Okay, so that's all in this session regarding the history of the conflict. So remember the keywords. We'll continue our discussion with the geography of the areas related, as well as the nuclear program of Iran. Okay, so that's all in this session. Thank you.